Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments, letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Cris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Hey, welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. What's up, guys?
Good morning, everybody. Cece, wearing the ring today.
I have to. Getting ready to go to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So last show for me from here.
From here. Cece will be with us the rest of the week. It will just be remotely from his adopted home of Minneapolis.
Yes, looking forward to that. Looking forward to a big show, big night in sports last night.
Tons of stories this morning.
And it's apropos to wear the ring because the next time you're in studio, there will be at least announced 5 new Hall of Famers.
Yes, at least.
At least 5 new Hall of Famers.
Number 3, 11 through 15.
There you go.
All right. Let's get right into this. Things have gone from bad to worse to OMG really for the Cleveland Cavaliers. The bad, they lost to the Pistons last night. The worse, they did so by giving up 125 points to them, and they didn't even have Blake Griffin yet. The OMG really? Kevin Love broke his hand and will likely miss 2 months. So possible trades are probably off the table. Other than that, things are going great in Cleveland. Here is LeBron James after the game.
It's unfortunate, for our team, and obviously with everything we've been going on as of late, with our ball club, just trying to figure out, how we're gonna play every night, our different lineups, and getting everybody into the flow. When you have Kev go out like that, he's gonna be out for quite a while, maybe 2 months. It's just tough on us.
If the Cavaliers are, as you still think, going to go, come out of the East, they want a real great, meaty story behind them to do it, apparently. How much trouble are the Cavs in, CC?
Well, they're in a lot of trouble because Kevin Love is one of those players, a lot like Chris Bosh, and we didn't see it that often, that they get criticized a lot, but when they're gone, you really, really miss them. And it's a lot of the intangibles. Kevin Love has such a great skill set. Not only is he can spot up from the three-pointer, but he has a nice post game. We know that he's, throughout his career, has been a great rebounder. And when you talk about Cleveland, they're an undersized team. So you talk about what can they afford to lose? They couldn't afford to lose one of their big men. Like, they got a short rotation, they got a short bench as far as guys that they can use, as far as big. So now they're even a smaller team. They're less effective because he's one of their better spot-up shooters. And him and LeBron have great chemistry and great, respect for each other. They've been through a lot of battles together. So now when you look at it and LeBron's on the court, who has he actually been the battles with in one series with when people counted him out? Like, all those things, I think people underscore. They don't really understand the value of them. So I believe they're going to miss Kevin Love. I know they complained about him. Oh, he had a stomach ache. Where were you? They're going to miss Kevin Love. And you're going to see, and you could see last night, that they couldn't immediately respond to the injury and his absence from the lineup, Nick.
The Cavs in the last 10 days have had 3 separate games that could have been, should have been, or would have been the low point in any season since LeBron came back. Giving up 148 to Oklahoma City was an embarrassment, right? I mean, that was outrageous. Losing to the Spurs' second unit, that was even worse. And then losing to Detroit, before we even get to the Love injury, losing to Detroit last night, a Detroit team that hadn't gotten Blake Griffin yet, but had lost Tobias Harris and Avery Bradley. A Detroit team that, aside from Andre Drummond, was out there with a fringe NBA lineup.
Yes.
To lose Trevor Ariza.
Yes.
No, so that was the Rockets.
I'm sorry, the Rockets.
No,
right.
Tobias Harris is what you mean. No Tobias Harris, no Avery Bradley.
Right.
You don't have Blake Griffin yet. There was no excuse to lose that basketball game. And then to lose Kevin Love as well. That is injury to insult. So I'm not going to sit here and act like the Cavs right now are fine, that the Cavs right now, this is just a lack of effort. Right now, they are flailing. And to Chris's point, who does LeBron have that he's gone to battles with, that he's won championships with now, that he's going to play with? Tristan, who's been terrible. JR, who's been awful aside from the one game when they changed the starting lineup. And then D. Wade, who the battles he went through with him were in a different uniform in a different city.
Right.
So for all those reasons, I get why people right now say this is the new low point for the Cleveland Cavaliers. The one small silver lining is this. If they are going to be able to win a championship, which is the goal for any year you have LeBron James on your team, Isaiah Thomas, as we've discussed ad nauseum, has to be a huge part of it. And now there's no more excuses for Isaiah. There's the guy that he had a rift with in Kevin Love is gone for 2 months. There is no other primary scoring option other than LeBron. Isaiah Thomas will get to run the second unit and the first unit at times, and we'll get to see if he can work himself into shape and do it. Last night, he did not seem up to the challenge. Last night, he once again didn't look healthy.
Yeah, the plus-minus, Isaiah's minus 25. Yeah. Which is awful.
The worst
right?
on the team.
Worst on the team. So now when you need IT, they need the IT from last year. But you have to realize, too, this is not IT's fault. He didn't want to be in Cleveland. Like, this has been a disaster from the Kyrie demanding the trade. Now, Kyrie's in a good spot, but Cleveland's not in a good spot because they couldn't afford to lose the only real star that they had in Kevin Love outside of LBJ.
Okay, so you mentioned now they're going to have to play a little more small ball. Let's talk more specifically of what this lineup is going to look like now without Kevin Love there.
I think there's a chance Jay Crowder gets his starting spot back. Right? I mean, Jay Crowder, they were going small. There's a chance they leave Tristan where he's at. They will leave Tristan where he's at. And they have LeBron and Jay Crowder as their forwards. The other guy is Chris's guy, Jeff Green.
Yes.
A guy who has
He's definitely going to get more minutes.
Absolutely. Because I don't think you can start Kyle Korver. I don't think they're going to start Dwayne Wade and go extra small. If they were to start Dwayne Wade, it would be in place of J.R. Smith. So, like, they don't have a ton of options. But you mentioned in the lead-in that it's now harder for them to make a trade. It's probably harder for them to trade Kevin Love now, but I don't think they were going to trade Kevin Love to begin with. They're allowed to trade him as long as the other team knows he has a broken hand. They want to take him on, but they can still make trades. They can still make moves. They just have less flexibility in the front court.
Okay, so I think when I mention that, it's because anyone that's going to probably take on Kevin Love wants to win this year, and he's out for the next 2 months, and I just thought that put them back. But who would you like? Who's available? Who do they have that's a good piece or a good chip that they could get something back for to help them this year, that they'd be willing to part with?
Well, Kevin Love, I believe, also his name will be discussed. Nick said they're not going to trade him, but like I said last week, everyone in Cleveland is open for business except LeBron. Like, everyone on that roster can be traded to try to make him better. Now, Kevin Love, he might be hurt, but if you look at teams like Charlotte, who maybe Kemba Walker, they want trying to get rid of him, Kevin Love would be a big star in a place like that. So I believe there's several other teams, Nick. Last night, Nick and I were on the phone talking and everything, and Nick's he's done a couple deals in his head and everything.
I tweeted one out involving Charlotte and Kevin Love,
so
actually, yeah.
There are potential moves for them to be made. I think Kevin Love can still be traded, even though we know he has a broken hand. It's his non-shooting hand. He's probably going to be out 2 months. And I believe Isaiah Thomas can be traded.
The reason that a team, I don't think they have to be in win-now mode to trade for Kevin Love is because he's got the 3 years left on his deal.
Yes.
So you could be saying, hey, we're not like Charlotte,
an established
for example.
Star.
Right, Charlotte saying we're not going to be good enough this year. Right. But if we have Kevin Love under contract for the next few years, then
at a good number.
Right, in the new salary cap year, a good number. But I do want to make this point because I think people are wondering if I'm finally going to join what I think is now the more popular sentiment, that the Cavs are in enough trouble to where they're not the favorites to come out of the East. I watched the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James at this same level he's at now, lose Kevin Love in the first round of a playoff series, have Kyrie Irving injure his knee in the second round of a playoff series and not be the Kyrie we knew him to be the last few years, and go to the Eastern Conference Finals and sweep a 60-win Hawks team off the power of LeBron James. Kevin Love is going to be back for the playoffs. Isaiah Thomas, I don't know how good he will be. I know he will not be worse than he is now. I still believe the Cavs are the heavy favorites in the East. Heavy favorites. I sit here this morning and I would be shocked if the Cleveland Cavaliers are not in their fourth straight finals. One thing that this injury complicates, though, is I still think they're going to make a move. Assuming Kevin Love is not one of the trade pieces, they are only going to have at most 15, at the least 4 or 5 games at the end of the regular season for Love to play with whomever they acquire at the deadline. And we've seen throughout this year the stops and starts.
Yes.
The getting rhythm with new players is a real thing in this league.
Yes.
We're going to have Cris Broussard on a little bit later to talk about this as well. But
Jenna
coming
and I
up,
have plenty of concern about the Cavs. So even though
enough concern
for
us.
Yes.
Anyone else in the studio,
Yes.
that guy in the back, and then everyone down 6th Avenue. We're concerned literally for everyone. More bad injury news. This one for the Cavaliers last night. Kevin Love will miss 6 to 8 weeks after breaking his hand in the loss to Detroit. Cris Broussard, what will the injury mean for Isaiah Thomas's role now moving
Well,
forward?
I know what Isaiah thinks it means.
let's hear
More shots, baby. I mean, last night he only took 10, but he was aggressive. He got to the line 13 times, hit 12. Here's a question. Does Isaiah feel like he played well last night? Because he was negative 25.
Yeah.
He scored 19 points, 12 or 13 from the free throw line, but negative 25. Is he in his mind saying, I played well?
I hope
or
not.
Does he understand, we got to be better and I have to be better?
Those calls, it's not like most of those were obvious fouls. Some of those calls he got bailed out on. Like that 12 or 13 could have easily been 6 of 7.
I agree.
So he wasn't driving to the rack repeatedly. There a couple were on jump shots. The one, and I mentioned this earlier, possible silver lining of the Kevin Love injury is Isaiah Thomas now, you don't have to worry about this big three. It's LeBron and he. He knows LeBron is the best player on the team.
Does he?
I think
I'm just messing.
I mean, I understand Isaiah Thomas has to play with an outsized ego. He knows LeBron's, but he definitely didn't think Kevin Love was better than him. Like, no question about it. But Love, I agree with you.
Right.
But so I think that's the one possible bright side is with Love out, if Isaiah Thomas can find more of a rhythm or any rhythm, because this team cannot win a championship without Isaiah Thomas playing excellent basketball. I know you think they can't win a championship.
Yeah, they can't win a championship.
Either way, you just think they're.
I know you think LeBron can do all, and he can do most. They can't win a championship.
But Kevin Love, to me, is a lot like Chris Bosh. Underappreciated. Really versatile, a lot of skill. Sacrificed a lot of his game offensively, even played further away from the rim than he preferred to do. Man, you know, and Chris Bosh, when he was out of the lineup there in Miami, they were a different team. I just believe Cleveland, Isaiah, especially because Isaiah, there's more pressure on him. That injury did not help him last night. Because without Kevin Love, now the eyes, because we know we're not going to blame it on LeBron. Yeah. LeBron's going to do his thing.
But they could blame it on Ty Lue. You know, like now they're going to look to him and say, okay, now you got to figure out how to make this team work. Whether you're going to trade someone, whether you're going to bring someone in, you got to get Isaiah Thomas up and running again, figure out a way for smart selection, smart shot selection, not a million shots a game, and figure out a way to get in there and play with LeBron if these two are the guys that are going to take.
Yeah, Ty Lue is always going to be part of the blame. Any coach that's with LeBron, except Popovich,
that's right.
They're going to get blamed. But as a staff, they're going to have to continue to evolve. They were evolving now. Healthy. Now what do they do? Which one of their bigs do they give more minutes to?
To your point, there's now even more pressure on Isaiah Thomas, and we'll see if pressure bursts pipes or not, or if pressure creates diamonds, whatever the hell you say.
Yes.
Like that, we'll see which way it goes for Isaiah Thomas. This big next 6 weeks for this basketball team.
All right, moving on. The Houston Rockets hosted Orlando last night. Well, some of the Rockets hosted Orlando last night. All right, basically just James Harden hosted Orlando last night. Harden had 60 points to go along with 10 boards and 11 assists. First player in NBA history with 60 points and a triple-double. Rockets without Chris Paul, Trevor Ariza, and for most of the game, Eric Gordon. But James Harden.
What does it mean to you to be the first player in NBA history to have 60 points and a triple-double?
It's a good feeling, I guess. Just try to go out there and make an impact every single night on the game. You know, however I can, whether it's scoring, rebounding, assists, steals, whatever it is. And tonight I was doing everything.
Really just incredible insight into what James Harden is thinking, what his mindset was, just his intentions, his goals in life.
He's an open book.
Honestly. How impressive was that performance last night?
Look, anytime you do something that has never been done,
how long they been playing basketball?
Well, the NBA, 70 years, 70, 71 years, whatever it is. Not just for that reason, though, but for the reason that in the 60s, we know Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson put up video game numbers.
30% more possessions. They were going so fast, it's almost impossible.
The level of play among the other players.
Yes.
I mean, Wilt did things that we will never see done again statistically. And so for you to do something Wilt never did or Oscar never did, it's incredible. This guy, he's so unusual because most of the stars today, you can point to some physical attribute. Kevin Durant, 7 feet tall, but plays like a guard. LeBron, just,
never
huge.
seen that body size, power,
Steph Curry's
speed.
superhuman shooting.
Exactly.
Yes.
Westbrook, the explosiveness. Harden, not incredibly athletic.
No.
I mean, he is so skilled.
He's smart.
Smart, skilled. I never could have foreseen this with him coming out of college. A lot of people liked him.
No, absolutely.
But nobody saw this. He's phenomenal. He's going to be the MVP.
Listen, he won it last night. I just want, barring an injury, James Harden's the league MVP. Like, I'm a guy that says LeBron should have won 9 of the last 10. Given how the Cavs are playing, given the fact that the Rockets
success,
no Chris Paul, no Trevor Ariza, no Eric Gordon, and by the way, James Harden's 55th and 56th point were on a step back to take the lead, and then he scored his final 4 points on one play, essentially. It was an and 1-3 to ice the game. This was, I'm going to go a step further that you guys might brush back at. This was, to me, as impressive as Kobe's 81. Like, to see this game, 60, 10, and 11, in a closely contested game. Kobe's 81 was close at halftime, and then in the second half, they blew him out. I know the Magic were terrible. Well, that Raptors team was terrible. This was as impressive as any individual statistical night I've seen in the NBA.
Man, 81 is 81. Like, stop playing. Besides Wilt's 100, man, 81 is 81. Now, he talked about before, especially with that era of basketball, when you don't have players like Wilt, you didn't have players like Oscar, were able to duplicate the 60 triple-double. It stands by itself. But I'm not going to throw any shade at Kobe Bean Bryant, that 81, because that was an amazing. Kobe, how many did he get on his last night?
What? Oh,
60.
60. Okay. Not only did he have 81, but Kobe had another 60.
Listen, I think Kobe's most impressive game wasn't the 81. I thought it was the 62 points in 3 quarters.
Well, that's true. Some people think it was a 60 on his last night.
And again, I don't think it's throwing shade. I'm saying it's as
it was that kind of special.
I'm not going to push back on you because Kobe had 2 assists. 81 points, but 2 assists.
I ain't got time to pass. I'm trying to get buckets, man.
And I'm going to stick with the never been done because, 81 had been done as far as Wilt scoring 100.
And let me just, real quick, I just want to tell the audience one other thing. How lucky we are these last 2 years. Going into last season, in NBA history, there had been 2 50-point triple-doubles. One by Kareem, one by Wilt. In the last year and a half, Russ has 3, Harden has 3. So in all of NBA history, there had only been 2. There have been 6 by these 2 guys in the last year and a half, and one of them now is a 60-point triple-double.
Cris, you touched on this earlier, but finish the thought. What does James Harden do better than anyone else? What is it about him?
He's just so crafty. Right. He's almost like an old school guy. Before Michael Jordan, he's not the best shooter. He's a very good shooter.
Different ways that he can score.
Exactly. Because last night,
physically, he's not going to play above the rim. His ability to be able to understand basketball. He's almost like a savant when he's dribbling, getting open space, and he is a shot creator. He can shoot some shots. A lot like Kobe.
His moves, herky-jerky, not
unorthodox.
Just throws you off. Like if you think back pre-Jordan, the best basketball players weren't considered that athletic. Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. It was about skills and intelligence, craftiness, all that.
Yes.
That's what Harden is. He's almost like a throwback.
And he's a wildly underrated passer. One of the 5 best passers
tremendous
in the NBA.
Passer, no question.
He doesn't get enough credit.
Other NBA news, the big Blake Griffin NBA trade Monday netted big reactions Tuesday, so we were discussing it Wednesday. 6 months after signing a 5-year, $171 million deal with the Clippers, they traded Griffin to the Pistons for a handful of players. Needless to say, the blockbuster move sparked reactions across the league, namely LeBron James, who waxed poetic about the trade narrative in the NBA. Here he was before the game yesterday talking about when he heard the news about Blake being dealt.
I just woke up from a nap and seen the news because I was like,
little bit in shock when I first saw it. But listen, I know the business, and as unfortunate as it looks, you know the business, so it is what it is. When a player gets traded, they was doing what's best for the franchise, but when a player decides to leave, he's not loyal, he's a snake, he's not committed. That's just that's the narrative of how it goes. So I'm definitely I know that firsthand.
Look, we always sort of knock some of these guys for not giving us insight into what they're really thinking. And LeBron is saying there's a double standard. When the team trades you, it's one thing, right? But then when you go somewhere else, all of a sudden, like, you know, you've done something wrong, or, you know, the fans start blaming you. Do you think, CC, that LeBron's right about a double standard?
Of course. There will always be a double standard. You have to realize now that the players now, I mean, they are multi-millionaires, but the owners are billionaires. All right? The players are under a contract, under a work agreement. The owner owns the team, pretty much owns the stadium. Now, and it will always be that the owner will always be able to do that. Like, and it is a double standard. Is it right? It's just the price of doing business. Like almost all of us have a boss or have an organization that is going to be over us, that the decision making is not going to always be left in our hands. I think the sport is better off that way. That's the only way you're going to be able to do business. And no, but the players got a great end of the deal, too, especially with the guaranteed contracts and everything that they have in the NBA, the labor piece that they have, the current TV deals that they have, the increase in the salary cap over the last 5 years. Like, it's a good trade-off, but it's nice that LeBron was able to set square and just be like, yes, this is reality. And when I saw it, I'm not so callous that it doesn't affect me. And I remember when I left here, compared to Blake, him being set up there in L.A. and now them shipping them off to Detroit. Yes, there will always be a double standard.
I think the big issue I have is not with the double standard between the power the owners have and the powers the players have, because you're right. That's in almost every industry, walk of life. It's the way the fans react to a owner or a general manager doing what's right for business and a player doing what's right for their business. It is
right, but a lot of times in doing that, what the player decides to do is not in the best interest of the fan's business.
Okay, of the team as a whole, which is what
the fan's business. The fan is the fan of the team and of the logo and partially of the player. We saw that with LeBron. We thought they were LeBron fans. No, they were Cavs fans.
So I think,
not to make an excuse.
No, I think the psychology is correct. I also think for some reason fans never want. Not many people grow up saying, you know what, one day I'm going to own a team. But almost all of us as little kids were like, one day I'm going to play in the league. I remember being 7 years old telling my dad, I'm going to be Moses Malone. Why I picked Moses Malone, I do not know. But I remember telling him that. Didn't quite work out for me. Most of us, right. And so maybe it's because fans then think, oh, I would love to be playing, and they don't think I would be an owner. But where we see it the most, the biggest discrepancy is with football. With football, when we will have 100+ guys under contract who are cut, and nobody is going to say, honor the contract, teams. Nobody's going to say, well, you signed him to a contract. But if we have one player hold out from camp the way Dwayne Brown did while under contract, what will the fans say? Honor your contract. It's why it takes an enormous breach for me to feel like a player's gone too far. It takes, when we heard Kyrie threaten to have surgery it didn't seem like he needed. That's basically, there was finally you have found something where I'm going to be like, wow, that's maybe exerting too much leverage. But a player demanding a trade, a player saying I want to sit out, like the teams do this to players all the time, and they do it knowing the fans in general will back up the teams. Probably because you said they're fans of the team first and players second, maybe most notably in the NFL, but in the NBA as well.
Yeah, it will never be a fair system when you look at the power that the owners have. And ultimately, I'm going to respect the owner doing what was best for the team. That is the price of being a professional coach. That is the price that you're going to compromise to being a professional player. But let me tell you something. if you give me $170 million, you can trade me. I'll go to Lithuania, okay? I'll go over there and play with the ball boys. You give me that over 5 years, you guarantee the whole thing. You can trade me, flip me, do whatever you want. Just make sure my money is delivered on time. So, the players got a great deal.
But just one last note, if Blake Griffin this summer had taken $170 million from Detroit, if he had signed with them, Clipper fans would be mad at him. But Clipper fans are not mad right now with the team for trading him. I think that's LeBron's point. Because he's going to get the money no matter what.
Let's talk relationships in the wake of a big quarterback move. You know the expression, go or get off the pot? Well, the Washington Redskins finally got off the pot.
Wow.
After years of marginal interest in Kirk Cousins refusing to sign him to a long-term deal, they finally are reportedly letting him walk. The Kansas City Chiefs, fresh off their first-round playoff boot, are trading Alex Smith to Washington. I ask you, Nick, was this a good move for Washington?
I promise I will answer the question in a moment, but if you can just give me a second to bask in the fact that Alex Smith, God bless him, is no longer the quarterback
but you don't really mean that,
of
though.
my home team. He's a good man. He's a charitable man.
He's a good guy.
He's what people would call a really decent guy. So I wish him the best, and I'm thrilled he now has lifetime and lifetime money. So God bless him, but also God bless the fact that he's not the quarterback for my team anymore. The Mahomes era has begun. Got a cornerback as well, so I'm very thrilled about that.
Mahomes is your guy.
Selfishly. Well, he has to be. For the love of God.
No. Last year, Jenna, before the draft, we had Mahomes on a show in Los Angeles.
That's true.
And from that time, Nick was like, because I was like, hey, man, he's from Texas Tech. Like, these guys said, they have a lot of big stats and everything. Don't know about his. Nick's like, I like this guy.
This is before the draft.
Before the Chiefs took him.
Yes.
And then we got to talk to him at the rookie premiere
in Los
Angeles once he was already a Chief. And so I'm excited for the Chiefs. But I think the bigger story is for our audience who are not in Kansas City right now is what this means for Washington, what it means for Kirk Cousins. What it means for Washington is I don't understand what they did. Now, maybe I'm biased. Maybe I have post-traumatic Alex Smith disorder from watching him the last few years. But I do not think Alex Smith is as good as Kirk Cousins. I think he's close. I think they're similar tiers, but I think Kirk Cousins is a little bit better. I know Kirk Cousins is considerably younger. He's 4 years younger than Alex Smith. And to not only trade for Alex Smith and the $17 million he's owed this upcoming season, but to instantly give him 4 years, $94 million, with a reported $71 million guaranteed, I don't think you got better. You didn't drastically improve your cap situation, and you gave up a third-round pick, and the kid Kendall Fuller, Pro Football Focus, says he's the best slot corner in football last year. So I don't understand this move for Washington, aside from the fact that for some reason or another, after being with Kirk Cousins from the first day of his career, they never liked him. They never believed in him. Jay Gruden clearly never wanted him as their quarterback. And so they got, to me, just an older version, not quite as skilled, of Kirk Cousins. So I don't understand this move for Washington.
Well, Alex Smith's going to have to change his game somewhat if he's going to continue on. If they're going to be a threat in the NFC East. Because, look, I mean, the Giants are going to come back strong. Philadelphia, man, they got a franchise quarterback. They got a lot of good players. Don't forget what's going on in Dallas. So how does Washington stay competitive? You have to realize it's just like a relationship. You only need one person to fall in love with you. You could have something coming out your forehead. You find one person, and that's what Alex Smith found in Jay Gruden. Jay Gruden knew in the last several years that Kirk Cousins wasn't the long-term answer. But also, does this give Jay Gruden more time there in Washington? Now he's got a new quarterback in Alex Smith who does give him more, especially running options as a quarterback. Now, I think Alex Smith is one of those kind of guys that takes care of his body. He's going to play late into his 30s or potentially play till he's 40 with the tight. He hadn't taken a lot of big hits, all right? But the receiving core and the skilled players, like, he's playing with less than in Washington. So if you look at his numbers, be like, wow, how is he going to be better in Washington with less skilled guys, less speed, less threats around him on the field?
And Cousins had better numbers, just quickly, better numbers over the last few years in Washington.
Didn't he have the top quarterback rating last year?
Alex Smith did. But
right.
the point but as far as yards per pass, touchdowns. Kirk Cousins had better raw numbers, not efficiency numbers, but raw numbers than Alex Smith, which is with
But they throw the ball a lot more.
But with worse talent. My point is Kirk Cousins had, to me, I thought, more impressive stats than Alex Smith with less talented receivers.
So the one question that I think all the football pundits have been asking and no one's been able to answer, and we had Jay Gruden on the show and we kind of danced around it a little bit, is what was the stake in the ground? What was the problem between Kirk Cousins and the Washington organization? What was it that didn't work? Because he played okay and he wasn't disgruntled in any way.
Well, first of all, what didn't work? Kirk Cousins wasn't the guy to get him over the hump. They weren't willing to invest in him long term. But Kirk Cousins didn't lose. I mean, the last several years, he's made how much money, Nick?
Oh, yeah. The last 2 years, he's made $45 million, and he's about to make
a ton of money.
A huge deal.
Right. So he won in that. The quarterback relationship with the head coach. If the head coach is calling the plays, and if he doesn't believe in you long term, we knew that when they franchised him, especially the second time. And they decided they were going to go in a different direction. So I always believe this. When the coach is with the player every day, I take what the coach says. Yeah. Like, my eyes might tell me something, but Jay Gruden actually sent a message in trading for Alex Smith, giving him a long-term contract, the contract that Kirk Cousins has been looking for 3 years.
And it also is noteworthy, Gruden isn't the guy that drafted him. Obviously, Mike Shanahan was there when they drafted him. But I just want to let people know, because Washington hasn't excelled on a super high level, Kirk Cousins' last 3 years, each of the last 3 years, at least 4,000 yards passing, 25 touchdowns. Just the quick list of guys who have ever done that, 3 straight years in NFL history: Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, Dan Marino, Peyton Manning, Eli, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
So, I mean, to move on from him so you can give Alex Smith $70 million guaranteed is curious.
Is there something to be said for the relationship sometimes superseding another player? So maybe the relationship between Jay Gruden and Alex Smith is going to be a lot stronger than it was with a guy like Kirk Cousins, and you can do more with a guy that believes in you and your system?
Well, potentially more. I mean, Cousins, they franchise him. That's no disrespect to him. I mean, he didn't have a long resume when they decided to go with him. They decided to go with him over RG3, who was a big-time draft pick, who they had to admit that he was a bust. So in doing that, they extended some type of faith in his ability, but not the ultimate faith, and that's in a long-term contract. When a coach believes in you, and it's really important, it allows you to really thrive as a player. Yeah. And when you're signing one-year deals, it's hard for them to say that they believe in you because the money tells the story.
This is where I think it was borderline organizational malpractice by Washington. If they thought his 2015 year was a mirage, that was his first really big year, and you want to franchise him in 2016.
Right.
I get it. Like, that is a thing a lot of teams do. But then in 2016, when he almost throws for 5,000 yards, has a 97 quarterback rating, 25 touchdowns to 12 picks, 8 yards per attempt. Once you decide after that year, we're not signing him long-term.
Right.
You knew you weren't ever signing him long-term. You could have traded him. There were things you could have tried to do to now be in this position.
Yeah, they franchised him again, and then they got rid of Deshaun Jackson and also Pierre Garçon, 2,000-yard receivers.
Right.
And now, he made a lot of money, but he still came back with another good season. Terrell Pryor, they signed him as a free agent. He didn't do anything for Kirk Cousins in the 1 year there.
So now we're now in a position, Cousins is the best healthy quarterback to hit the market in a long time. People are like, oh, Peyton Manning was a free agent. He had his neck operated on.
Right.
Drew Brees was a free agent. He had shoulder surgery. Dante had the knee surgery. Like, we haven't had a quarterback this good hit the open market in a long time. A lot of teams are going to be going after him. Like this. Go ahead.
I know my man Witt, Jets fan. Jets call him up.
Very much going to want
Kirk
him.
Cousins. You guys have been scrambling. Fitzpatrick, all these other guys. Call Kirk Cousins, and he's played in the cold. All right, he'll be able to throw the ball in that conference. I mean, look, they got Tom Brady. He's already the second best. He's already second best quarterback if you put him in the AFC East.
Can I tell you where I think it should call him? Cleveland. Cleveland. You got the first pick. If you're not going to draft a quarterback, you could make it to where you have multiple number ones in consecutive years of the draft. Load up on blue chip talent, maybe a Saquon Barkley, maybe another star defensive player, and try to get Cousins that way.
Yeah, you might be able to get you an offensive lineman and get Barkley with the number 4 pick too.
Right. There's a lot you could do if you're Cleveland if you can sign your quarterback instead of having to draft him.
Man, that makes too much sense. They're not going to do that, and that's not going to happen.
We would be remiss if we didn't end this segment the way we started, by congratulating you on giving you hope and optimism for maybe this year letting your Chiefs get out of January.
Please, Patty Mahomes.
So 20 years ago, the Broncos won their first Super Bowl title behind a 3-touchdown, 157-yard performance from Terrell Davis. And now the Hall of Famer joins us live from Minneapolis, sight and sound of Super Bowl 52. And we thank you so much. TD, thanks for coming on the show and being with us this morning.
Oh, no, thank you for having me, man. It's good to be here. It's nice and cold, but looking forward to this week.
Well, we were going to have you outside, but then we decided why not just put you inside so you can actually use words and answer the questions we ask you. Hey, can you believe that Super Bowl was 20 years ago? Is that the kind of game where you could probably remember every single detail of it, even though it was so long ago?
I wouldn't say every single detail. Remember, I had a migraine in that game in the first quarter. So some of the stuff is a little sketchy, but for the most part, I remember, obviously, the fourth quarter. I obviously remember walking off the field and hoisting that trophy. It was a great moment for us and all the fans in Denver because that was their first championship. So, yeah, it was, 20 years ago. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but you said 20 years. Yeah, that's quite a long time.
You mentioned the migraine. A quick story. I had a very good friend in college who was not a football fan at all, and I saw her closet one day, and there's a Terrell Davis jersey. And I asked her, I said, "Why, you're not from Denver, you're not a football fan?" She had dealt with migraines. She had been in a program or something that you were associated with and talked about going through that. I'd never had a migraine in my life, so I can't even conceptualize what that's like. Can you tell the audience what playing in a football game, dealing with that is, the difficulties it was? Because that's, I think, an underrated part of your amazing story, is almost like debilitating condition you dealt with.
Yeah, you said the word debilitating. That's exactly what it's like. Most people don't understand that a migraine headache is not just a headache. It's, it's a spectrum sort of disorder, and it affects you on a lot of levels. Number one, for me, my vision would go out every time I get a migraine, so I couldn't see anything for about an hour to about an hour and a half. And then once my vision came back, I would get this pounding headache. I would have nausea. I would vomit. And then I would have just, painful headaches for sometimes, days. And so it really is a tough condition to try to function. And the only thing you can do a lot of times is go into a cool, dark room. All your senses are heightened, whether it's smell, whether it's sight, hearing, everything is just heightened. And it's pretty intense, man, when you're trying to play in a game. And everything, it just hurts. There's no way around it. And, but I've had them since I was 7 years old, and I've played in actual high school games and college games and Pop Warner games with full-blown migraine headaches with no relief, nothing that could actually bring relief to me. So, when I got it as a pro, I kind of had some experience with it, so it made it a little easier, but they were always very difficult to deal with.
Well, TD, that's part of your story, being able to overcome great obstacles. And even through that, migraines high school, migraines in college, and going on to have a Hall of Fame career. They're now with the gold jacket. Can you kind of explain to the fans what it was like? Because we're going to put another class in on Saturday night. What was it like to get the call from the Hall?
Oh, Chris, it was, it's a feeling that is hard to explain, here's the deal, because there's nothing like it out there. There's nothing that I can compare it to. So when I got the call or the knock on the door from David Baker, man, it was so many emotions that ran through my body. I was so excited, man. I had joy. There was a relief element to it. There was just a part of reflection where you're thinking about your entire life and how it culminates with this knock on the door. There's so many different elements to it, that was kind of balled into one. But man, the bottom line was that it was just a fantastic experience to have. I can't tell you how much that this jacket I'm wearing right now means to me. I never thought that I would feel this way about this jacket or being in the Hall of Fame. I used to try to downplay it because you can't control it. And so when people would ask me about possibly being a Hall of Famer, I would say, you know what, man, it just wouldn't take away from my career if it never happened. But man, what it means now that it's here, I could have never expected it to mean as much as it does at this point.
2 questions, Terrell. First of all, have you taken the jacket off since you've been there? Because I'm sure there's a number of great players walking around Minneapolis right now, and you got to stick out somehow. I would imagine the yellow jacket is one way to do that. And number 2,
no, I'm answering first. So I have not taken it off yet. No, go ahead.
That's good. I'm sure it smells amazing. Great dry cleaning for that kind of stuff. 2, I also want to ask you about the great running backs that we are watching right now. The guys like Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, Kareem Hunt, Todd Gurley. Is there one in particular that you have an affinity towards, that you really enjoy, that you see maybe some of the things you did in their game? Who's been your favorite to watch in the last year or 2?
I think as a running back, you have favorites. There's not like a favorite. A running back, to me, is like an artist, and so I appreciate the different types of play that they do, right, or they bring to the game, different abilities. Todd Gurley is a big, tall, long strider. Love his game. Loves Zeke Elliott's game. Like some of the young guys like Dalvin Cook, who got hurt this year. You like Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey. So to me, I look at running backs, and I'm just a fan of a lot of running backs, because I know how tough it is to be a back, and the fact that they bring different qualities to the table, and they all look different, but they all are effective in one way or another. So I'm just a fan of watching these young guys run.
A lot of the guys we just mentioned there, Todd Gurley, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, those are not only first-round picks, but top of the first-round picks. You obviously were a 6th-round pick, I think 196th overall, but that's not that rare. It's rare to become a Hall of Famer, but it's not rare for the running back position for you to find a great player later in the draft. Kareem Hunt was later in the draft. Alvin Kamara was later in the draft. What is it about that position in particular that you think either, I don't know if people are misevaluating it in the draft or if it just translates better college to pro? Why do you think that position you can have such instant success even as a late-round draft pick?
I don't know. I think a lot of it is just because it's an instinctive position. When a guy is in college, sometimes he's not in the right system. Sometimes, he doesn't have blocking up front. Sometimes there's, maybe the quarterback is not as good as he probably could be. So those things sometimes affect the running back. And a lot of times you look at it back and you look at production, like numbers. And people say, all right, if you didn't rush for 1,000 yards in college, then maybe he's not going to be any good in the pros. And they kind of use that in the evaluation process. But, like me, I was kind of a guy that when I got to the pros, it was kind of the perfect situation for me. It was an offense that focused on running the football. When I was in college, we didn't do that. So I think different things sort of go into I think teams not finding that player who they need to take in the first round, and it's like you said, it's proven that backs are going to 3rd, 4th, 5th, sometimes 6th round can be good for you. But I don't think teams necessarily go into the draft thinking we're going to find a guy like that in the later rounds. Sometimes it's just by chance, because otherwise they draft them in the 1st or 2nd round if they thought that a 4th round pick would be as productive as a first rounder.
Hey, TD, one of your ex-teammates and now one of your teammates for eternity in the Hall. He's been known as a guy who likes to talk a little bit of trash. Myself, I like to call myself a person who likes to have a conversation with people on the field. But when you were up for the Hall, no one was more vocal about it and upset about you being not put in the Hall than Shannon Sharpe. Can you give us one of, because Shannon shows after our show, can you give us one of the best Shannon Sharpe trash-talking stories, one that maybe he might not be too proud of?
Well, there's a lot of those, but I think there was one game we played the Chiefs in Kansas City, and at the time, Derek Thomas and Shannon were going at it, and And Shannon's pretty good at getting under your skin, man. That's what he was known for. We didn't like it because it made our jobs hard, because when he got the defense all upset, you know, we had to run up against those guys. But in this particular game, it was one drive where we ended up basically going down the field because Shannon had Derek Thomas so frustrated that he committed like 2 personal foul penalties in a row, maybe 3, and he ended up getting kicked out of that game, which helped us win that game. So you're right, man. That dude can talk, and it's no surprise that he's on a talk show right now, and that's what he does for a living, because he was pretty good at it.
All right, I don't know how much you can reveal, but there's some legendary stories about that particular game. That game in particular, Shannon took the trash talking to a different level, correct? Can you at least confirm that part of the story?
Off the field?
Yes. That is confirmed. Normally, you stay within the lines. It went a little deep, so that's all I can tell you, man. It was a little personal.
Yeah, that's what we hear.
Yeah.
Hey, Terrell, you are there in Minneapolis. I would imagine that the one question you get as you walk all around the city is, hey, who's going to win? So I guess I should ask you, between the Eagles and the Patriots, these are both 2 teams that were sort of headed this way to match up in the Super Bowl. Tell me a little bit about this matchup on Sunday.
Well, I mean, you know, everybody. You got the Patriots, who are, you know, been there, done that team. A team that is hard to game plan against, because you look at them and you say, well, what are their strengths? What do they do well? Who do we have to take away on their offense? And some people might say Gronk, but if you take him away, there's other weapons that can beat you. So they're a team that can sort of morph and they can adapt to any situation. And we've seen it in the past. And then you have the Eagles, who they're new to the scene. Obviously, great defense up front. Fletcher Cox and Curry and Long, all those guys up front, they're formidable. Their back end is played well in conjunction with that front end. A good linebacker core. Obviously, on offense, they've got a quarterback in Nick Foles that, you know, we saw him last game. Looked like he was basically an all-pro. Can he take that performance that he had last week and bring that into this game? And that's kind of the question for their offense. It kind of evolves around Nick Foles and how he's going to play. I think right now my early sense is that I'm leaning towards the Patriots at this point, but that could change just kind of based on how I see the week unfold. But I mean, it should be a good game. It should be a close game, and really this is the first time that I look at 2 teams and I say, well, you can make the argument for either team to win this game and feel real good about it.
All right, Terrell, you're here on behalf of Kay Jewelers. We actually got to talk to Orlando Pace yesterday. He was with Kay Jewelers. Chris Carter's wearing his Hall of Fame ring. I believe that is the Kay Jeweler partnership. Can you tell us a little bit more about Kay Jewelers and what you're doing with them?
Absolutely. You know, I'm honored to be here with Kay Jewelers. They're the official jewelry store of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And, of course, you talked about this ring of excellence that it's hard to take off, Chris. You know that thing. It's a beautiful thing. Look at that.
You got 2 Super Bowl rings in one of them. It must be a nice ring.
You know what? But you know what? I wear this one more than I do those other 2 rings. I just those are on. They're in my house, but this one gets outside. We go with this one, man. So Kay Jewelers, man. You know, right now, obviously, Valentine's Day is coming in a few weeks, and so we're talking about winning Valentine's Day. If you want to win Valentine's Day, you got to go visit your local Kay Jewelers store or go to Kay.com, and that's how you get it done, man. It's a beautiful thing. I know you were talking about pendants earlier, Chris, and so you got to make sure you go visit Kay Jewelers, because I'm surprised that Kay didn't send you. They send you a pendant, man. Did they get you a pendant?
Yeah, I got a little situation though. I'll talk to the people at Kay. I'll talk to the people at Kay Jewelers. Yes, I need a pendant. Yes.
Hey, real quick, just before you go,
okay.
Was our friend Mark Schlereth
I'll talk to my folks, and I'll see what they can do for you.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, before you go 30
ahead.
seconds. Was Stink as gross as he makes himself out to be on the field?
Yes. I've
Think
witnessed
about it for a second.
Okay.
I've seen it. No, I'm not. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. I've seen this man do some stuff in the huddle that I don't even want to share with you. That a grown man shouldn't do. A grown man shouldn't do.
Well,
Thank you
so much for hanging out with us this morning. Enjoy it. Have a great time there this week, and definitely have fun at the game.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to First Things First. Eric Mangini is
It
here.
has been too long.
It has
Good to
been
see you.
Man, genius.
He
had to
is.
bring him in.
Can I tell you how awesome our guests are? My little one, Quinn, turns 3 on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. And Stephanie is gone for a month. I mentioned that. I'm all alone, and I'm stressed. Guess who offered to come by and watch my girls the entire day so I can focus on the Super Bowl?
No.
Eric Mangenius.
I don't believe that for a second.
I'm off 10th Avenue, so you're just going to
Coach,
keep
you
going
need to
until
get
you
back
hear.
to work.
I do a lot
That's
of
just not like
a lot of work in childcare. So it's kind of a side business that I have.
Happy birthday, Quinn.
Mom,
Welcome back.
It's good to have you
New
back.
watch as well, or at least a different one.
I got to get the other one fixed.
Oh, okay. There you
Well,
go.
we're really getting into
It's a
the weeds
rental.
here. Okay. Coach, among the many talked about topics discussed Super Bowl week, and there's everything. The matchup is a big one. Boy, reporters will find anything to match up Super Bowl week. The players, the trainers, the uniforms, pets, nicknames, deodorants, literally anything. This morning, we're going to match up the coaches. And one is Bill Belichick, who will be coaching in his 10th Super Bowl on Sunday. The other is Doug Peterson, who was coaching Louisiana high school football 10 years ago. Peterson addressed going up against one of the greatest coaches in football history.
Obviously a challenge. You go up against a very smart coach, an intelligent coach. Coach is going to have his team, well prepared.
Coach Peterson's done a great job with this football team, certainly with the offense. They've lost a couple of key players this year, but they've continued to roll along with tremendous production in all areas of the game.
But we just have to make sure that we're all focused, and it's a commitment to obviously to the team, to the organization, to stay on top of that, and try to anticipate the best you can.
Look, everyone agree, Coach, this is going to be a challenge, obviously, for Doug Peterson. But when you're going up against a guy like Bill Belichick, what is the biggest challenge that you're going to be faced with? What's the one thing that he's going to have to factor in?
The most important thing that he can do is really understand his team's strengths and his team's weaknesses, because that's how New England's going to be looking at them. They can go and look at film from multiple other teams, multiple other games, and it's not going to be what's applicable to them in the Super Bowl. Bill in New England is going to identify what do we have to stop, who do we have to stop, and what can we attack. Identify those three things. And if Peterson doesn't understand that and doesn't have a plan to get his playmakers open, to counterbalance the new things that New England's going to do, then it's going to be a real problem. But he's got to start with understanding his strengths, his weaknesses, and how he's going to protect the things that he wants to do.
All right, so I want to expand on that, because one of the things we hear about Belichick and the Patriots, and I'm sure a lot of teams do it, but Belichick and the Pats are the ones that we talk about the most or get the most credit for. It is we always, going into a playoff game, what does the other team do best? That's what the Pats are going to focus on taking away. Going in the Super Bowl, a lot of discussion was, are they going to focus on Julio Jones? Is that what they want to take away? Or is it going to be the running backs? What you mentioned there is something that doesn't get discussed enough, which is it seems like one of the major points of focus is, what does the other team do terribly, and how can we exploit it? And that, if I read you correctly, if I understood you correctly, and that's where it's on Doug Peterson to self-scout and say, this is where we struggle. This is where New England is probably going to see the weak link in our chain, and we have to be prepared and equipped for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, and it's also understanding what is my answer going to be once the game unfolds, because it's going to be given away fairly early, or it's going to be apparent early what New England's trying to get done. Mm-hmm. Then can you go to the sideline and adjust and say, okay, this is how we're going to attack it now, and that's something New England does really well.
Right, and I think it's very important that Doug, he stays in the moment. And in the moment in the Super Bowl is, you're not going against potentially the greatest coach ever. It's still about X's and O's. It's still about managing the emotion of your players. What is the game plan once they get into the game, and how do I stay in the game plan? What he's going to have to figure out is not Bill Belichick, but offensively, how does he generate big plays against that New England defense? Because I believe that they can run the ball somewhat. I believe they can dink and dunk it. They run some RPOs, run some quick slants. I believe they can do that. but they cannot win unless they generate big plays in the passing game. So just like you talked about, New England has analyzed them, what they do and what personnel. Doug Peterson needs to do the same thing. Analyze New England. Yes, during the regular season, they were one of the best teams in the red zone, as red zone defense. But in the field of play, how do we generate big plays either to get us in the red zone or get us touchdowns? And I believe that Doug, he'll lean on what Andy Reid did. I'm going to show you a little piece of film from the first week of the season. I know, Coach, you always like some film.
I do.
Andy Reid has mentored Doug Peterson. You can see Kansas City here in the basic 4-receiver set or 4 wide-out set, and they do it by formation. They do a bunch to the right, a bunch to the left, and you're not going to beat New England by just lining up and just out-Xing on them. You're going to have some trickery. So right here, they put pressure on Stephon Gilmore. Now, Stephon Gilmore is a lot better player later in the season. New England's got a great red zone defense, but they gave up 60 pass plays of over 20 yards, 11th most in the National Football League. So, Doug Peterson, it's not a mano-on-mano battle. How do I get my team in certain formations, and how do I exploit that defense and generate big plays down the field, which Andy Reid, his mentor, was able to do the first week of the season? No team was better at that than Kansas City in that matchup.
And when you look at what they've done the last couple of games, they've gone deep early in the script. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to back teams off, because this whole offense is based on timing and spacing. So if you allow defenses to come up and jam your wide receivers to clog things up, the offense doesn't go. So very early in games, the first play against Atlanta, they take a shot down the field.
It was a bad pass, so they drew pass interference.
They drew pass interference on the very. So you walk the defense off, and you establish, okay, if you're gonna get up and crowd us, then we're going to take some shots down the field and see whether or not you can hold
Coach,
up there.
A question for you. Do you crowd teams, or is that the psyche if you have a backup, or you just don't respect the quarterback? Is that a level of disrespect to them, or what? No, explain that to us.
Well, with a West Coast offense and the timing and the spacing, everything is predicated on someone getting to a spot, the quarterback getting the ball out, the guy's going to be open, they catch and run. So what you want to do defensively is you want to get up, and ideally if you can play cover 2 and jam and hit the wide receivers and reroute everything so that when Foles goes back and he's looking for the first answer, it's not there. Then he's got to find a second answer, and in order to back people off, you got to say, okay, if you want to come up like that, we're going to take shots down the field and see whether or not you can hold up. And that's going to be the balancing act.
Doug Peterson can talk to this team till he's blue in the face. There's still going to be nerves. Everyone's still going to be excited. It's going to take a few minutes before everybody calms down into this game. So how much do you think he's going to script the first couple of plays, minutes? I mean, how far deep into it will you go just to get Nick Foles a little bit comfortable and pretty knowledgeable about what he's going to have out there?
There's going to be a significant script, and ideally they should have a script in mind for the second half too. I think you script the first half, and either you get some core plays that you've practiced, because you've got 2 weeks of preparation. Script some things that you want to do in the second half, then pull some things that worked from the first half back into the second half, just so there's coming out at halftime, there's a calm to it.
Yeah.
With the Super Bowl, everything's longer. The anxiety level is higher, and guys will sometimes, they'll be exhausted before the game even starts. And as a head coach, you got to reel everybody in and say, okay, relax, and give them the best chance to save their energy for the game.
I think Doug Peterson also need to look at the other Super Bowl appearances by New England. In 7 of those Super Bowls, they have not scored in the first quarter. So they do have tremendous experience, but they got a lot of nerves too. That's not customary for them to start off like that. So if Doug can, that first 15 plays, man, that 15 plays is important. If they can get on the board, New England has shown us now this is their 8th Super Bowl.
It's a crazy note. They've never, Brady and Belichick, Pats teams, have never scored a point in the first quarter of a Super Bowl. At the end of the first quarter of every Super Bowl they've played in, it's either been 0-0 or they've been trailing. They've never scored a point. So that's, I mean, it's enough 7 times. It seems more than a coincidence. Not to say it's guaranteed to happen again, but you do have an opportunity to jump out on them. Now, not only the Giants have turned that into a victory, but you do have an opportunity to jump out on them. Now that the NBA season is heating up, I wanted to talk about another podcast we do at Fox Sports, and that's Cris Broussard's In the Zone. Each week, Cris breaks down what's trending in the NBA and the biggest names in the league. Previous guests include Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaq, John Wall, and myself. So if you love the NBA, make sure to subscribe to In the Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to First Things First. Jason Witten just finished up his 15th season with the Dallas Cowboys, his 11th as a Pro Bowler. He's joining us now live from Minneapolis, side of Super Bowl 52. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. How you guys doing this morning?
Good. We're doing great. We appreciate you you getting up and talking to us. I was going to go somewhere else, but you know, when you mentioned how many years you've played, it seems like a lot until you look at the quarterback who is quarterbacking one of the Super Bowl teams and is still seemingly in his prime, if you will. Can you start for a little bit with all your accomplishments? There's Tom Brady out there at age 127, who's starting for the New England Patriots. Is that hard for you to believe?
Yeah, it's amazing to see, you know, and I'm only a couple years behind him, I guess, but I really think what he's done, you know, I mean, just beating Father Time the way he has, and, you know, I'm not real sure about the avocado salads and all that he's got going, but, I mean, the guy's just playing at an unbelievable level, and, you know, he has the blueprint for all of us on how you extend your career and really how you can play some of your best football in the latter stages of your career. So, you know, he's just a great example for all of us, especially some of us older guys who are trying to chase what he's doing.
Yeah, and let's be honest. You live a regular, I mean, you work hard, but you actually live a regular life. You're only a few years younger than Tom, and you play a position where they're allowed to hit you, and you have to hit other people. Being a 36-year-old tight end is more impressive than a 40-year-old quarterback, correct? Give me some honesty here, Witten. Come on.
I don't know. You know, it's hard for me to go against, you know, what he's been able to accomplish and really that position. But, yeah, there's certainly a lot more hits that you take, a lot more, a little bit more of the grind that you got to endure. But, you know, hey, look, anybody that can play into their 40s, you're not going to hear me say much negative talk about him. It's really it's remarkable what he's been able to accomplish, and any of these guys that we're seeing playing later and later. And I mean, you know, Cris, you started that blueprint a long time ago. I guess if you just keep scoring touchdowns like you did, it's hard for him to get rid of you.
I just want to follow up real quick, if I can, Jason, about you. What are some of the things you've had to learn to do as your athleticism has dipped somewhat to still be as productive as you've been? Some of the tricks, some of the things you've been able to do to extend your career in, I was joking, but it's serious, a very physically demanding position.
Well, I think that's just evolved over time. I mean, look, when I was 20 years old coming out of Tennessee, you know, that was some of those same knocks were the same thing. I was never a guy that was just going to blow you away with speed, and it was always about the details, the psychology of the game, understanding routes and leverage and how you attack that and finding the soft spots and zones. And so, you know, there's a technique behind all of that. And so the older you get, the more you rely on those experiences, the more the details, your preparation allows you to sustain and have success. And, you know, I think that's what I lean on more now than ever, and still feel like I can play the position at a high level.
Whit, you played against the Philadelphia Eagles twice a year throughout your career. So you're very, very familiar with them. Even this new Doug Peterson regime that they brought in. We know that Nick Foles is the story there. Can he be productive as he was last week in the NFC Championship game? But I think you have great insight into playing against that front seven, that rotation that they bring in, and the secondary. Which one do you think in this Super Bowl 52, secondary or that defensive front, presents the biggest problems for Tom Brady and the New England Patriots?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, they're a top defense, and they've shown that all year long they've done that. I think it starts with the rush. They got a number of guys that can rush the quarterback, and they rotate those guys in. But to me, the secret is in their back end. You know, there's not a lot of known names back there other than Malcolm Jenkins, but they do such a good job disguising their coverages, blitzing you, playing a lot of different stuff, so you really can't get a beat on them. And, you know, Jim Schwartz is one of the better ones of doing that. And so when they're sending all these different coverages, partnered with this rush that's going to get to you, whether it's 4-man, 5-man rush, I think it goes to the back end. You know, they play at a high level, and they disguise it really well.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Rob Gronkowski is not exactly out of concussion protocol yet. All signs pointing to the fact that he most likely will be come Sunday. I think it'll take an enormous amount of force to keep him out of that game. You know the position well. How big of a factor will Gronk be, do you think, on Sunday, if he plays?
Oh, he's huge. I mean, he's the biggest playmaker they got on that offense, and he's done it for a long time. Tom has a lot of confidence in him, and you see it in their routes. There's such a trust factor between the two of them, and so to be able to move the chains, get them ahead of it, and then take their shots with Cooks, Amendola, and some of those other guys. And so I see him coming back. I mean, he's been a tough player throughout his entire career, and I think he'll work through this, and he'll be at his best. So he's done it time and time again throughout his career, and I'm certain that he'll be the same way, the type of player that they expect him to be, and just such huge plays throughout the games at critical times that he makes, and it's a testament to the way he works.
For both teams in this game, I think their biggest threat in the passing game is their tight end. Everyone knows about Gronk, but Zach Ertz has had a tremendous year, had a really good NFC Championship game. What have you seen from Zach Ertz, who obviously hasn't been in the league as long as Gronk has, that impresses you, that you like, the parts of his game that you think maybe the average fan doesn't recognize?
Well, Zach had a tremendous year, and I think really the understanding the route concepts. I mean, he's always been an athletic guy. He's got good speed. He can attack you vertically, but I think this year we've seen him attack zones, find soft spots, set up his moves. When he's running double moves, he's setting it up all together, and that's the art of a really good route runner. And you're seeing it, especially at the tight end position, when the guy across from you in most cases is more athletic than you are. But I also think with this system, the RPOs, the runs built in with the pass plays, just being at the right spot. I mean, the linebacker, the safety, they have to make decisions on where they're going to fit these runs. And he gets a lot of catches off of those plays. And I think it just shows his knowledge and how hard he's worked at it to understand where he needs to be. And I think Nick has a lot of confidence in him. And when you run this type of offense, there's a lot of success depends on, what the look is and where the linebacker, how is he trying to play it. And, really they feel like you can't win. They always they hold the chess piece last. And, Zach's made some huge plays in this offense and tremendous talent. So I agree. I think both of them are going to have big games.
Whit, good news, bad news situation. The good news is we're glad to have you on the shows. Bad news is those are all the easy questions. Now here come the fireball ones. I don't know if you remember this. I knew they were coming
at some point.
I don't know if you remember this, me talking to you and telling you my favorite team growing up was the Dallas Cowboys. I always wanted to wear that star. I was always attracted to them. Their formation, the linemen coming up, all the innovation they had, offensive football, like that was my football team. So America wants to hear about the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott, an amazing rookie year. We saw the struggle in year number 2. You being the leader of the Dallas Cowboys, I tell people that Witten is the leader. What are you and the other skilled guys trying to do to help Dak recover in year number 3 to get his career back on track where you think, and you've always in all the interviews said that you have utmost confidence in him, get him back to where you think he's playing to his potential?
Yeah, well, I think what Dak's done, he's shown that he has all the intangibles. He's tough, he's smart, he can handle adversity. He's a really good young leader. His ability to play make and, forget about the last play. I mean, that's in this day and age, it's hard to see players at that position make that transition and have the success that someone like Dak has. So, I think offensively as a whole, when you don't have a success and you do play in a market like Dallas, the first person that gets criticized is the quarterback and then, of course, the receiver. And for us, we got a lot of confidence and know that they're elite players, not only for our football team, but in this league. And so I think you just get back to the drawing board. You all come together. We look at it as a whole and say, hey, okay, we know we have to play better. We have to get our offense back rolling if we want to compete in this conference, in this division. And so I think it's just believing in him and understanding that, we're going to go back to work and fix it. And so I think when you have seasons, you don't have success to the level of expectations you want, you really it's got to start with yourself. And I think when we all look at ourselves and are critical with it and have the confidence to be critical of ourselves, and when you do that, I found that you're able to get through those things that you don't do well and overcome it.
Well, one of the players, you talked about the quarterback and the receivers being the most important players on offense that really need to take a look at themselves and say, how can I play better? How can I help this team? We know that Des Bryant is coming in as a young player, wants to be coached, wants to be molded, but then you have a guy like Des Bryant. And we talk a little bit on the show about whether we think Des Bryant is going to stay in a Cowboys uniform. Does he have it in him to change and be part of what's happening? Or will he go somewhere else and we'll see like a second coming of Des Bryant? No one knows better about what's good for the Cowboys than, we do, obviously. But you being an actual player, tell us a little bit about where you see Dez Bryant as a key piece in this Dallas Cowboys offense. And will he have to change for him to turn his career around a little bit and really be a force on the team?
Well, Dez is a really good football player. I've seen him come in as a league as a 20, 21-year-old guy and grow up both not only on the field but off the field as well. And so, I don't know that there's a better guy going up to getting the ball and high pointing it the way that Dez does. As I said earlier, as a whole, when we don't have the season we want and you look at the stat line, it's easy to make kind of blanket statements on what happened. And I think for us as a whole, we all are going to look at ourselves and say, okay, here's the areas we can all do better. But I do believe Dez is a premier player, as I do Dak is, and you can build your franchise around both those type of players. And so, I think that he can still play the position at an extremely high level. And so we all just got to go back to work. And those questions are going to be asked. And when you're not playing in January and into early February, so you have to evaluate it. You have to be critical of it and understand that's where we're at. But I believe in Dez. I think he is one of the premier players at that position in our league.
Jason Garrett's job security is something that the media talks about a lot. It seems to be a big discussion everywhere except for within the organization. The players never seem to question it, and Jerry Jones has been very vocal in not questioning it at all. So I ask you this. What are some of the things Jason Garrett does really well that you see that maybe the fans aren't seeing? That I'm just sitting there evaluating clock management and challenges on Sunday. Like you're with him every day. What are the things that you see that the fans don't necessarily see that make him the right coach for the Cowboys?
Yeah, he's extremely intelligent. He's played that position in this league. He understands what that looks like. He's a really good motivator, great communicator, handles the logistics and the nuances of over the course of a week really well, of getting everybody organized. And he's been a play caller in this league. He's some of his offenses in his system, and so I think he does a lot of things well. And seen that from time to time. You forget the guy was Coach of the Year in 2016, and so he has high expectations for himself. He's a very confident guy, and he believes in delegating to his players and coaches and assistants, and so he has a good system in place. And ultimately, I know he knows this better than I do, but we all have to do a better job of understanding what's wins and loses in this league, and I think he establishes that over the course of the week of what that winning formula looks like. So really good football coach. It's been a pleasure for me to be around him as long as I have.
Hey, Jason, you've teamed up with the Schwans to let fans know that they deliver the ultimate home meal advantage with foods that are easy to make for game day or any day. It's a great program. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it's a really neat deal they got going, and ultimately, to be able to, with every new order, they're going to donate $5 to the food bank here in Minneapolis. So a lot of great stuff. It's an honor for me to be able to team up with them, and so they can check out more at schwans.com.
Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I know the Cowboys were my team growing up, but I think one day you and I are going to be on the same team, bro.
Oh, that's a Hall of Fame line. There you go, man.
Thanks, Cris.
Hey, much appreciate you stopping by this morning. Have fun there.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Have a great day.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.